quick chip update, David? Would you like one of those?
Yeah. Is it still with you?
No. It's long gone. But I will say this: they don't ever tell you this about eating very hot things. For a few days, not for a few hours. Don't listen to WebMD. For a few days, my taste buds were completely altered.
Really?
I could taste sweet things very vividly, but I could not taste bitter. So when I drank if I had a soda or a beer, it almost tasted flat. It tasted very sweet. They don't tell you that. It didn't burn them off. I'm no doctor, but it numbed them, I think. I think it's the capsaicin that numbs them.
Wow. So it heightened your sweet sensitivity, right?
I was basically Daredevil of sugar. Yes.
Right. You had super sweet spidey senses on your tongue, but the bitterness was gone. Wow, that's interesting. Would you take that? I mean, how was it? Did you like it? Did you miss the bitter?
Yeah, I missed the bitter. I'm a big bitter fan. I'm a big fan of IPAs.
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
We know you're bitter.
We've got a great show ahead, brought to you by our friends at Frame Warehouse. We're going to talk to Jonathan DeLong of atthehive.com on Steve Clifford's defensive scheme and if it's getting in the way of Hornets' success. Plus, we're going to recap a game against Miami that did not go the Hornets' way, which is how it's been on the road pretty much the entire season. So we'll tackle that as well. Big show. Make sure you're checking us out live on YouTube, youtube.com/Locked On Hornets. Joining us on the live chat, The Nest. Visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/LOH for more. One more thing before we get started. You know what's bugging me? You know what's bugging Doug right now?
Let's add it to the list. What's that? What's up next?
The players that are either making contact with the referees, Sean Livingston got busted for that the other night.
Busted.
Or players like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and others who are either taking sort of swings towards the referee.
Air punches, yeah.
Air punches, or just being aggressive. Like, let's calm. Look, I know the game is intense. There's one thing being intense.
You're in the game.
But
we get it.
But like, the referee should be off limits.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. I don't mind if you take an air punch, right? If there's a swing coming at you, then I'm fine with you getting kicked out. Like, the ref has got to say at some point, no air punches, no regular punches either, but there's certainly no air punches.
All right, let's start the show.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Nobody likes the referees, but we need the referees. Otherwise, we descend into chaos.
Are we no better than the beasts?
We got to stay away from the referee. I think the NBA is going to crack down on this. I think Adam Silver is going to have something to say about this. This is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Search your podcast app for Locked On to get podcasts on the NBA, the NFL, and fantasy sports. We are coming to you live from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA, beautiful uptown Charlotte. Make sure you're visiting Gittimer.com for all your sales advice, sales information. If you are in sales and need some help, Gittimer.com is the place for you. I am Doug Branson, joined by my friend from the mean streets of Cotswold, the man, the myth, the legend, David Walker.
Do you think it's just like a matter of the players just they want to display their intensity, like just to show how locked in they are? Is it like, I get the frustration, but yeah, you got to curb it. You got to take a step back and say, I'm not going to air punch. I'm not going to berate this guy. I mean, I get it. No, you're right.
I think
no one likes the refs. I don't want to confuse this. No one likes the refs.
I think these things go in cycles, and you sort of have to lock this down every once in a while and say, hey, the guys with the striped shirts, those guys are off limits. Those guys are you can't go after those guys. It's one thing to go after your opponent after a tough play, a hard foul. It's another thing to go after these officials who are not are not competing. But I think the players see it like that. I think the players see the referees as competing forces. I got to mention.
Blaming LeBron? You blaming LeBron on this one?
I'm blaming anyone who does that. It doesn't help the game. It doesn't make the game look good. It doesn't help the flow of the game, and it's causing these players to get ejected. That's not a good thing either for the product. So it's all about hashtag the product. Hey, speaking of product, we've got some product on tpublic.com, some T-shirts, the Buzz City Frazier shirt, the Buzzamania shirt, modeled by our listener Mike there. So go check those out, tpublic.com, search for Locked On Hornets. There is a link in the description of this episode, and this episode is brought to you by our friends at Frame Warehouse. They have the best price on your next framing project. They have 6 locations here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Make sure you're checking them out, framewarehouse.net. All right, let's begin this show in Miami, where the Hornets and the Heat were meeting, both needing a win to kick losing streaks and prove that they didn't belong in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference. The Hornets got off to an amazing start, a 16-1 run to begin the game. That would soon evaporate, in large part due to Josh Richardson, who began his game 9 of 10 from the field. Hornets down 1 at the half. This game stayed tight until a 9-0 Heat run late in the fourth sealed the deal for Miami. Heat win 105-100. The Hornets dropped to 8-13, 1-10. 1-10 on the road this season. David, what box score numbers stood out to you that explain another Hornets loss late in the fourth quarter, another Hornets loss on the road?
Oh, man, Doug, you could really pick quite a few. I mean, if you went down this box score, you could pick out just about anything you wanted to point to. For frustration, I mean, there's just so much frustration after this game, I think, for a lot of people, because it was another one of those games. The first one I want to start with, this isn't directly related to this box score, but you mentioned it a little bit. They've led in 6 of these road games. They've led after the first quarter, right? And they're 0-6 in those games. So it tells me that the starts aren't really the problem. You know, for the most part, the starters, they're getting off to fine starts, whether it's when the bench comes in, there's a massive letdown, or, you know, the rest of the team just not continuing to play throughout these games. Something about these road efforts is not being, you know, followed through on. And that's a major issue. Obviously, Doug, they cannot go without winning on the road this season. And they got to get some of this stuff fixed. That was a key game, because you tell me that crowd in Miami was not there to start the game, right? Even though it was an 8 o'clock tip, it was not there to start the game. It was not in the game. But you see this happening. They let these teams hang around. And I'm watching that game saying, well, hey, you know, 6-8 point game. It's always within reach. They cannot put any of these teams away.
There's a couple of things you can point to. 22 turnovers on the night. That is exceptionally high for a Charlotte Hornets basketball team, and a lot of those early in the game. And, you know, they got off to that 16-1 start, but sort of piddled it away. They piddled it away with a 16. I think there was like 16 turnovers in the first half. Pretty amazing for the Charlotte Hornets, and 9 of those coming from Dwight Howard, who did not play in the fourth quarter. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But also only 23 pointers attempted, 35 by the Miami Heat. And that's a big story for the Charlotte Hornets this season as well, not taking as many three-pointers lately. That has hurt them offensively. But really, this game came down to offensive execution in the fourth quarter, not able to get it done. Of course, they didn't have Kemba Walker there to take late-game shots. What did Miami, David, do so right in that fourth quarter, and what did the Hornets do wrong?
Well, the Hornets had the likes of MKG shooting important jumpers, you know, with under 2 minutes, which is not good. I mean, that's just not a good scenario. And the Heat, I mentioned this guy in the pregame, Dion Waiters. Just when you think he won't hurt you, he comes back and kills you. He hit a late 3 for them late. I mean, they did a good job of keep getting open looks at the three-pointer. And you mentioned that three-point disparity, Doug. That was one of my box scores. Now, I intentionally did not send you my box scores that we were going to look at. That backfired on me in this particular scenario because you just hit on them all. You just hit on the other ones that I was going to mention. But 5 of 20 for the Hornets, and then 14 of 35 for the Heat.
It's all about communication.
That's it says we don't plan these things out. And Clifford mentioned that. You know, he's like, well, it's going to be hard to win when you don't make when your opponent makes 9 more threes. I mean, what do you do with that? What do you do with it at this point? They're not shooting the amount of threes. Obviously, that hurts without Kemba, but that's still a game. You feel like some of the veteran leaders on this team, and I may be looking directly at Nick Batum, have to kind of step up and take this game from a team that's relatively young and inexperienced in Miami, or certainly doesn't have like a lead dog. I mean, Dragic didn't have a great night. That's so frustrating to see the Miami Heat take control of that game down the stretch. Michael Carter-Williams, it's
4 of 7
difficult.
from the field, did get 4 free throws. 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 12 points. A moderate night, certainly an improvement over his game in Toronto.
They're just asking a lot of him right now. I mean, but they put him in that situation. No Kemba. He's being asked to drive and distribute, and that's what you're seeing in late game situations, especially in this one. It wasn't good. The options were not good. There was waiting way too long to get things going. And that's why you end up seeing MKG hoisting up a couple of jumpers. Michael Carter-Williams unable to even get off a good look at times. It was frustrating and tough to watch.
Offensive options not good for the Charlotte Hornets. Hey, David, you know where options are always good? Frame Warehouse.
Totally.
I don't know if you know this, but this is the absolute best time of the year to get something framed, whether it's a holiday gift, a home decoration, or something maybe for your bonus room. Now is the time to get your framing done and get it done right with our friends at Frame Warehouse. We're proud to partner up with Frame Warehouse because they've been family-owned right here in the heart of Charlotte for over 35 years. They have the guaranteed best price on every framing project. At Frame Warehouse, you can frame almost anything for next to nothing. If you can think of it, you can get it framed. We're talking about sports memorabilia, posters for your office, maybe your kid's bedroom, or how about a Hornets jersey? I know they're looks like they're releasing these classic jerseys on Monday night, so maybe you want to get one of those up on the wall. The best part is that Frame Warehouse makes the whole process super easy. And I don't know about you, David, but I need easy. Frame Warehouse has framing experts that will walk you through the entire process and turn your project around quickly and for an amazing price. Don't let your prized possessions go undisplayed. Talk to our friends at Frame Warehouse at one of their 6 locations in Charlotte. Go to framewarehouse.net to find the one nearest you and tell them Locked On Hornets told you to drop by and give them a Go Hornets, Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.
You are listening to the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Kemba is out. LeBron got kicked out. Wade is old. Pop is a genius.
Don't give up on social media, Doug. You just got to be social.
Oh, that's real nice.
Get more Hornets analysis on LockedOnHornets.com.
Yeah, we've got a brand new website, LockedOnHornets.com, in association with FanRag Sports. Go check that out. Let's get back to this game in Miami. I want to go to the fourth quarter where, again, the Heat go on a 9-0 run to end this game, and in the Hornets' shot at winning this game. Miami got most of their points in the final frame in 2 ways. The first was by forcing switches on their guards with ball screens, and their guards took advantage. Goran Dragic, Josh Richardson, Dion Waiters, those were the players that were performing well offensively for the Miami Heat on those switches. The MCW Batum MKG combo, when you put those side by side, on paper they would struggle to compete with those 3 guards from the Miami Heat, and it played out in reality as well. They just could not compete, didn't force switches. Miami was able to stay in their defense, and those guys didn't make shots. Batum, 5 of 14 from the field, 13 points. MKG, 5 of 11. Not going to get it done in terms of efficiency, especially without Kemba Walker. The second way that Miami was able to take advantage of the Hornets was by penetrating and kicking out, David. It's the lifeblood of Miami's three-point offense. The Hornets did not do a great job of defending it late. In fact, the knockout punch, you mentioned it, was Dion Waiters' late 3. Olynyk, the ball handler on that play. Dragic screens for Waiters. No communication up top between Jeremy Lamb and Michael Carter-Williams. Waiters gets free towards the basket, but instead of feeding Waiters, Olynyk decides to fake the direct handoff to Goran Dragic and then drive. Cody messes up the footwork a little bit, allowing Olynyk penetration. Olynyk was a little off balance, so it would have been a tough 2, but Lamb leaves Waiters in the corner, not good, to attempt a block on Olynyk. He kicks out, open 3, bang, Heat up 6 with a minute to go. Big moments, little details. big moments, little details. That's been where the Hornets are losing these close games, and it's really punishing them, especially on the road. And Dwight Howard not playing at all in the fourth quarter, David, that was a big story. Only 17 minutes in this game. Was that okay with you?
Not really. I mean, I get it because the Heat, they had a bit of a smaller lineup, I guess, with Olynyk in there. But when you look at this box score, Doug, there were 2 guys for the Hornets that had a positive plus-minus in this game. That's right, 2 guys for the whole team throughout the game that had a positive plus-minus. One of them did not play in the fourth quarter, and that was Dwight Howard. Nick Batum was the other guy with a positive plus-minus. I mean, that doesn't tell the whole story. But I just think right now the Hornets need to win games. And to me, I don't know. I mean, maybe your best shot for that is playing your best players in crunch time. I get it that maybe he's going to struggle where Cody might be able to stay with Olynyk a little better, but I don't know. I mean, obviously the offense was hurting. I just think that, and Dwight picked up his 5th foul in that third quarter and never came back in. But that hasn't been a problem for Clifford really in this season up until now. I mean, he's trusted him to stay in there and play with him. Maybe you fear the hack of Dwight strategy coming out a little bit. Hack of Howard. Is it hack of Howard? You go hack of Howard. I guess hack of Howard is more pleasing to the ear, right, than hack of Dwight.
Yeah, hack of Howard. Okay.
They could have deployed that strategy, I suppose, but without Kemba, you're basically playing without your 2 best players. And so I get it to a certain extent, but I think he deserved to get a look for a few minutes in there just to see what kind of difference he could make.
Well, so here's the problem, David. So he had 5 fouls. And he was going to they went small at the end of the game, so he was going to have to go up against Olynyk, and you saw Olynyk able to drive on Cody Zeller. He certainly would have been able to get by Dwight Howard, especially, starting beyond the three-point line. That's going to be a struggle for Howard. But the 5 fouls key because he was going to have to be a little careful, or he was going to foul out of the game, and that would have given what little Miami crowd was there, would have continued to give them life. Plus, he had accumulated 9 turnovers in this game already. It looked like he wasn't really. These were not sort of normal, trying to make plays turnovers. These were throwing elbows. Not really focused when he was getting these
smacking people in the head.
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things that I don't think Clifford is apt to really put up with. And
I hear you.
And I think it cost him an ability. And I think he knows that. Like, I think Howard knows that and knows that, like, okay, if I'm going to have 5 fouls and 9 turnovers, it's one thing not to play me in the fourth quarter when, I've got 10 rebounds, I've been focused, I don't have all these fouls, I don't have all these turnovers, but hopefully he would understand
9 boards,
this
right? He did
situation.
have 9 boards. He was one away from another double-double. I mean, the fouling out thing is a little – doesn't really matter to me because he had 5 fouls. If he's going to foul out, he's going to foul out. If he's not going to play, like, what's the difference?
Well, there's been a few articles, David, written on Dwight Howard's resurgence in Charlotte, and while he's definitely made some highlight plays, when you dig a little deeper into the numbers, we might be getting ahead of ourselves slightly. Might be, a case of relativism where relatively he's making an impact in Charlotte where he didn't make as big of an impact relative in Atlanta,
right.
But his PER is the lowest since it's been in his rookie season. True shooting, the lowest since his sophomore season. His turnover percentage, the highest since his 3rd season in the league. This is not what I think Howard meant by recapturing his days in Orlando. His steal and block percentage also down from last season in Atlanta. This all despite his usage percentage bumping up from 19.2 last season to 25.6. So he's getting the ball a lot more, just not able to convert, especially off the post up in the paint. That usage
it's not ideal.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, Doug. And Howard, it's not like you're putting back in LeBron James, right? Like I totally get that. It's just this team is searching for something right now, and to me, it would have. I don't know. Maybe it would have made sense to give him a look, maybe at the start of the fourth there, and see how he handled things. It's who knows. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. Maybe it makes things worse. But I think you got to give your best guys a shot when you need a win, and they need all these wins.
Well, I mean, I think he took himself out of this game, and then you give Nick Batum a shot as well, and in that fourth quarter, and played with the bench in the fourth quarter, which I've been calling for. I think is going to be important for the Hornets' success in the long term. But he has just been terrible offensively. 2 of 8 from 3 in this one, 35 minutes. 4th on the team right now in usage, 8th in points per shot attempts, according to Cleaning the Glass. That puts him only above Malik Monk, Michael Carter-Williams, and Dwayne Bacon. That's just not going to cut it offensively, especially when Kemba's out. Yep. I mean, these are moments when Nick Batum has to step up and justify that contract that they gave him and be, no, I'm serious. Be an offensive leader. These were moments. I'm not saying this in an overall kind of way. I'm saying early on, he has struggled offensively, and that has to change. Otherwise, that's going to be the narrative. We're building towards justifying the narrative that you and I have been saying, no. He's an extremely good, smart role player that's going to have an impact offensively when he needs to. And so far, that hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. It's pretty frustrating to watch. And I get the frustration from fans out there looking at that salary too. A lot of that was situational, and we don't need to dive into that today. But the fact of the matter is he is being paid in a fashion to have much more of an impact. And quite honestly, they brought him in not to be the third option, not to be the fourth option, which at times he's being. I mean, he was brought in to be the running mate with Kemba, and he was signed up here to do that. And this was all before Dwight came in, of course. But he needs to be that guy for this team to have success. And I just don't know how this plays out going forward. But, man, he's got to step it up, and he's got to play better than he has been because, what else do they have? I mean, he provides them so much, but if he's not making an impact, it's doubly negative.
This is Locked On Hornets.
And would I have liked to see a few more shards? No, I would not have.
That's awesome shards.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Joining us now, Jonathan DeLong, a writer for AtTheHive.com. His latest article is Turning a Strength into a Weakness, How a Staple of the Hornets' Defensive Identity Has Backfired on Them in Recent Seasons. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I don't think I've ever gotten an introduction like that before. It was kind of cool.
That's good. Well, you're a new writer on AtTheHive.com, right?
I've written 2 research pieces and 1 game preview and recap or something. So yeah, I'm pretty green.
Well, this was a fantastic beginning to your At the Hive career. Let's jump into this article, Jonathan. Very interesting stuff. The Hornets have a coach in Steve Clifford that demands defense. They have a wing defender in Michael Kidd-Gilchrist that has an ability to guard the opposing team's best offensive weapon night in and night out. They have Marvin Williams, who is as smart as it comes at team defense. And they added Dwight Howard in the offseason, who's healthier than he's been in years and was supposed to help anchor the team in terms of their rim protection. Yet the Hornets' defense hasn't improved quite to the level that Steve Clifford expected it to so far early in this season. What's going on?
Well, it hasn't improved at all. Honestly, it's actually gotten a little bit worse. And it's basically not a personnel problem, it seems, because it's the same problem that plagued the team last year. And it's a problem that is consistent no matter who's on the court. It's not like there are defensive liabilities on the court causing problems. It's just it's a fundamental scheme thing, I think.
Go further into that. What scheme issues do you think the Hornets have that may be plaguing them?
Steve Clifford has his pillars of what he expects his team to do, because that's his winning formula in his mind. And the Hornets are always really, really good at executing those tenets of his principles. He says, no offensive rebounds allowed, always the league's best defensive rebounding team. He says, don't foul, always the best team in the league about preventing opponent free throw attempts. He says, take care of the ball. We've been historically good at taking care of the ball. The other one is to keep teams out of the paint. And that sounds good, but in the way the NBA is played in 2017, it doesn't really work that way anymore. Only 3 teams have fewer shots attempted against them within 5 feet of the basket. The problem with that is instead of settling for mid-range jump shots and contested 2s like teams did in the past, they now just camp out behind the 3-point line and shoot 3s. And 3s have become the most efficient shot in basketball at this point because teams have gotten so adept at making them. So we've basically traded off contesting the perimeter to keep teams out of the paint, and it's backfiring because teams are making their 3s and just beating the Hornets. It's been 2 years running now.
So teams are still shooting the same, if not more, threes against the Hornets on a given night, but this season the percentages have gone down. The Hornets are top 10 in both three-point field goal percentage allowed and overall field goal percentage. So what accounts for that discrepancy in your mind between their defensive rating and their ability to hold teams to a lower percentage in terms of field goals, both beyond the arc and below it as well?
The issue is that the volume of threes getting attempted against the Hornets. Mm-hmm. So 32% of shots attempted against the Hornets are threes. I don't know where that ranks against the league. That's not like readily available. I came up with that myself. And so when teams are shooting that many threes, they don't have to shoot a particularly high percentage to match like your expected output of regular 2-point attempts. So if your teams are shooting, I think it was like 32 threes a game against the Hornets, if they're making 35%, that's over a point per possession, which is pretty decently efficient offense. And that number probably will go up because the Hornets are getting kind of lucky and that teams are missing open shots.
So what's the answer then, Jonathan? Should the Hornets abandon any notion of guarding easy layups in favor of an all-out assault at the three-point line?
Not abandon it, but they need to trust Cody Zeller, Dwight Howard, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist to protect the rim on their own. And part of that is not collapsing in the paint if somebody gets by their man, and the other part of that is switching on pick and rolls, because pick and rolls are getting the Hornets in a lot of disadvantageous situations because there has to be so much help on the backside to prevent easy layups, and that's getting people out of position, and it's just a couple swing passes for teams to get open threes. And the other thing is we just don't need guys like Kemba Walker, Jeremy Lamb, and them crashing in to help stop layups if Dwight Howard and Cody Zeller are there. Cody Zeller is one of the best rim protectors in the league. Dwight Howard is above average, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is elite at protecting the rim. The shift needs to be perimeter players stay on the guys on the outside, let the big guys take care of the inside shots, like contesting layups.
Interesting stuff from Jonathan DeLong. His latest article for atthehive.com is called Turning a Strength into a Weakness, How a Staple of the Hornets' Defensive Identity Has Backfired on Them in Recent Seasons. Go visit atthehive.com to check out those charts and graphs that Jonathan put together. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Lots of pretty pictures. So if you like pictures, it's a great read.
All right. What do you think about that, David?
Love pictures, Doug. I love pictures. Let me just comment on the title picture there.
Oh,
it's Clifford. Nice. It's Clifford with his hands like rubbing his, his forehead as far as it'll go. It's a perfect picture for this. So kudos to the guys at the Hive for putting that on there. Man, what do you think, Doug? Because obviously the numbers don't lie. That's something I decided a long time ago, and I stuck with that. But you and I watch these games, and we still see, not to single anyone out, but Jeremy Lamb give up drives to the basket with not much resistance. I mean, that's still happening on an individual level. It's going to happen here and there. So
yeah,
it's not totally a personnel issue, but I do think there are certainly strides to be made from particular wing defenders, not named Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, in crunch time situations particularly.
You won't hear many Hornets talking about the problems with the offensive or defensive scheme. And while that's not always an indicator of problems with said offensive and defensive scheme, it can be, a surefire indicator if there are problems with that. I think that Jonathan's piece was well researched and well thought out, but I'm not ready to call the Clifford defensive scheme a fossil that we should throw out just yet. I think the Hornets have seen a significant drop in opponent three-point field goal percentage, unlike the Knicks, who are giving up a lot of made three-pointers. The Hornets are just giving up a ton of three-point attempts, and as you heard Jonathan say there, though, the question is volume. That was the issue with the Miami Heat game. Yeah, they attempted 35, they made 14. The Hornets attempted 20, only made 5. Right. But the place that the Hornets are really getting killed is their soft middle. I'm talking about the area 4 feet from the basket, right outside the restricted area, to the free throw line. So we're talking about runners, long putbacks, drive and pull-ups, step backs by guards off of switches. Goran Dragic had 2 or 3 of those on Friday. The Heat were 8 of 12 on those types of shots. That's where they're getting killed. If they eliminate that, then they would be a lot. And that's all penetration. That's all mano-a-mano, right, making sure that you're with your man. So I think that's more of an issue at this point, because I think, honestly, they've been switching a lot more. To me, the defense looks a little different than it did last season. I think they are allowing Dwight Howard, when he's not pulled out by one of these stretch bigs, they are allowing him to single cover the rim. It's just they're getting blown by too often, and that's causing ripple effects that have really killed them. I think, honestly, the problem has been consistency in defensive intensity and organization night to night. And I feel as if Dwight Howard has been a lot more effective at home underneath the rim than he has been on the road. And those two things combined, I think, have really been what's wrong with the defense. I'm just not ready to say that the way Clifford schemes out his defense is wrong or can't win, because we saw it win 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting look at it because it's certainly a philosophy. And he does mention in there how successful Clifford is at implementing like the keys to his defense. I mean, he talked about the turnovers are down and the rebounding. So, I mean, those things are working. I think when you don't have anything, the results aren't there, you're not getting the wins, nothing is successful. You do have to take a look at everything. So, I mean, it's valid.
And I'll say this, 2 of the best defensive teams in the league right now, Boston and Portland, both make it a point to be aggressive at the 3-point line. And they give up a little bit at the rim to do that. So I think there's some validity. There's a lot of validity, I think, to what Jonathan wrote there on atthehive.com, but I think it's not the sole problem with this defense right now.
Yeah, the biggest thing to me is that the amount of 3-pointers they're giving up. I mean, as he mentioned and as you just hit on too, that's been a problem. That was a problem, big problem last year. That's what lost them a ton of games, and it's continued into this season. We thought it would
and
be
maybe
better,
there's
though.
an adjustment by the personnel. Let Lamb not diving down and guarding Waiters at the 3-point line in the quarter. Maybe that was, is that a mistake or is that schematic? It's tough to tell because we're not at practice every day. But certainly some things are going to have to change. Got to talk about this game tonight, David, against the Orlando Magic. Big game for the Hornets. The start of a 4-game homestand that I think they have to pick up 3 of 4 at this point to kind of get things back on track. You can give up the game against the Golden State Warriors. They thrashed the Miami Heat last night. So that's a preview of possibly what could happen to the Hornets on Wednesday. But
National TV game.
Yeah, well, but they've got games against Chicago and LA after that, so a chance for the Hornets to get things back on track here. The Magic began this season as one of the surprises of the Eastern Conference. They began 6-2. Since then, they've gone 3-12. The big news for the Hornets is they'll most likely be getting Kemba Walker back. Walker participated fully at practice on Saturday. He's listed as probable. Whether you think these past 2 losses have been 100% because Kemba has been out, 50%, maybe not at all, it's going to be an additional boost to have him back in, David.
Of course, man. He's the leader of the team, obviously. And Orlando is not a great defensive team. I mean, they give up about 111 points per game to the opponents. So that hasn't been a particular area of struggle for the Hornets anyway. So they should be able to get their points up. They're just going to need to lock in. I mean, Vucevic last night went for 34 against the Knicks. That's a bit concerning. I think he's the guy we focus in on anytime the Magic come to town. And so the interior guys of the Hornets are really going to have to be playing. I think, you're going to ask a lot from Dwight and Cody as well. I think he's the guy that kind of scares me going into this game tonight.
Yeah. How committed will Dwight be to guarding that Vucevic mid-range shot? I think will be a big key in this game. Also, Elfrid Payton has been maybe fairly or unfairly sort of the variable when it comes to, they were 6-2 at the beginning of the season and then 3-12 since, and Elfrid Payton's return to the lineup sort of fell right in the middle there. And, listen, he's not a pick-and-roll defensive whiz kid, so I think you can expect big things tonight from Kemba Walker if he does return. He's had several 40-point games against the Magic, so this could be another big night, taking advantage of Elfrid Payton. And it's been the difference, I think, Peyton's defense and a few other things as well, the difference for the Magic, because they have been giving up a ton of 3-pointers since that losing streak began, or that 3 of 12 streak began. So, you said it, defensively, they really struggle. If there's one night for the Hornets to get their groove back offensively and defensively, it's got to be this game.
Yeah, and they've given up 120 points or more in 3 of their last 5 games. They've given up 130 twice. Now, one of those was to the Warriors, but they let the 76ers score 130 on them, and they let the Pacers score 121 on them. So, at home against a team like this, the Hornets, again, the starts haven't been an issue, but this one has got to be a back against the wall type of game that they've got to come out. It would be nice to see them get a lead, hold on to it. I mean, runs are going to happen, but it would be nice to see them put a team away. That's something they have not done at all this year.
They rely a lot on their starters, so if the Hornets can get production out of their bench players, if Frank Kaminsky can have a good shooting night, if Jeremy Lamb can continue his streak of good offensive games, then the Hornets, again, have a shot at being a little fresher later in the game, and maybe, if it's tight going into that third quarter, we'll have an opportunity to pull ahead of the Magic late. They're going to be without Terrence Ross, their starting shooting guard, for a while. Aaron Aflalo will get more minutes. He hasn't really found a rhythm offensively yet. The Hornets will have to make sure he does not suddenly discover one. That most likely will fall to Nick Batum, who got criticized, I think, outside of that Miami game, after that Miami game, for his defensive effort and defensive organization. So he'll have to have a bounce-back game, both offensively and defensively. David, real quick, what else are you watching for tonight before we head out?
Well, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the DJ Augustine / Bismack Biyombo revenge game. Watch out for those two guys tonight, Doug.
Absolutely. And I'd
seriously.
Watch them.
Watch them. Seriously, watch them, guys.
I'd love to see some more touches for my man Marvin Williams. He's the most efficient offensive player the Hornets have this season. His points per shot attempt are above even Kemba Walker's. But he's one of the least used players on the Charlotte Hornets. His usage percentage near the bottom of the rack, and maybe one could say maybe that's correlated. That less shots for Marvin Williams means more efficiency, and certainly they've been putting him in the 3-point, above the 3-point line, putting him in situations where he can knock down corner threes, and he's been successful at that. But not a lot of the offense is running through him. But late in games, listen, if Nick Batum's going to struggle to shoot, if Jeremy Lamb's going to take odd shots, if Kemba Walker's having an off night, then maybe try.
That's a great way to put it.
Then odd shots.
Cut down on those odd shots.
Hashtag odd shots. But maybe it's time to run a few plays for Marvin Williams at the end of games and maybe play him, because he hasn't played it at the end of some of these games. They've gone to Frank Kaminsky in a few of these situations. So listen, I think you gotta give it a shot. Give anything a shot at this point when your back's against the wall. So that's my final thought on that game.
Yeah, maybe we'll come up with a few things they could try at this point to just throw against the wall, because like we mentioned last week and you just said, they got to try anything in their repertoire right now to mix things up and try to find something that works and try and get out of this funk. But yeah, and I think with Kemba back, you'll see a few more touches for Marvin as well, hopefully. I mean, those two guys obviously used to playing together, and Michael Carter-Williams just struggling to keep everything together in his time as the starting point guard. So with Kemba back, maybe Marvin will get a few more looks.
Yeah, Mark here on the chat saying, aren't the stats showing that Marvin is shooting better this year? Feed him the ball. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, his percentages, his efficiency, some of the highest numbers in his career. So maybe just a few more looks for Marvin could be a key to getting this victory over Aaron Gordon and the Orlando Magic. Tip set for 7 o'clock. And again, those classic jerseys, or at least a few of them, it seemed like Pete Gwelly was saying that the Kemba and the Nick Batum jersey would be available, if not more. So make sure if you're out in Charlotte tonight, you are in the Spectrum Center cheering on the Hornets and buying those classic jerseys. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Hornets here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Check out tpublic.com for some awesome t-shirts and mugs and different merch. Shoot us your Hornets questions and thoughts to buzz at LockedOnHornets.com and visit LockedOnHornets.com. Brand new website. Looks great. Nick Denning, our friend and contributor to this show, will be keeping you updated on news and analysis for the Charlotte Hornets on that website. For David, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Beat the Magic. Let's swarm Charlotte.